Yangchen is not dangerous because she is violent. She is dangerous because she is certain. When people think of powerful avatars, they usually picture spectacle. Kyoshi's raw force, Roku's firestorms, Aang in the avatar state glowing with overwhelming energy. Power in Avatar is often associated with destruction you can see coming. Yang Chen is different. Her danger does not announce itself. It does not flare. It does not rage. It arrives quietly, already decided, already justified, and already complete. By the time Yang Chen acts, the argument is over. Not because she won it, but because she never allowed it to begin. That is what makes her the most dangerous avatar. Yang Chen does not struggle with doubt the way Aang does. She does not wrestle with her identity. She does not hesitate at the edge of violence. She understands her role with terrifying clarity, and she accepts the cost of it without flinching. And that acceptance is far more frightening than anger. Aang is tormented by the idea of killing. Kyoshi wrestles with whether violence defines her. Roku is haunted by the consequences of mercy. Yang Chen, by contrast, is calm. She does not ask whether she is right. She asks whether the world will survive if she does not act. That single difference separates her from every other avatar. Yang Chen grew up in a world that taught her a hard truth early. Peace is not preserved by purity. It is preserved by intervention. Her era was not one of open war, but of quiet instability, political fractures, spiritual unrest, threats that did not look like villains until it was too late. Yangchen learned that waiting for certainty is a luxury the Avatar cannot afford. Where Aang waits for a solution that spares his soul, Yangchen chooses the solution that spares the world, even if it costs her everything else. This is the first thing people misunderstand about her. Yang Chen is not reckless. She is not cruel. She is not violent by nature. She is disciplined. And discipline, when combined with absolute moral clarity, is lethal. She does not act out of emotion. She acts out of responsibility. That distinction matters. Aang's danger comes from his power. Kyoshi's danger comes from her willingness to use it. Yangchen's danger comes from something far more unsettling. She does not need power to intimidate you. She only needs to decide that you are a problem. Once that decision is made, there is no performance, no warning, no negotiation. There is only resolution. This is why Yangchen unnerves people when they truly understand her. She represents a version of the Avatar who has fully accepted that balance sometimes requires irreversible harm. And unlike Kyoshi, she does not wear that harm visibly. Unlike Aang, she does not carry it as a burden. She carries it as duty. That is far more dangerous. Yangchen's philosophy is not about violence. It is about containment, about eliminating variables before they spiral, about acting while outcomes are still controllable. She understands something that later avatars struggle to accept. The longer a threat exists, the more people it consumes. Mercy in Yang Chen's worldview is not measured by sparing an enemy. It is measured by preventing suffering at scale. And if that requires decisive violence, then violence becomes the compassionate option. This is the point where people often recoil, where they want to push back and insist that this thinking leads to tyranny. That certainty without doubt is dangerous, and they are not wrong. That is exactly why Yang Chen is dangerous. Not because she is evil, but because her logic works. She does not justify her actions emotionally. She does not need to convince herself she is good. She accepts that goodness is not always clean, and that the Avatar's role is not to preserve their own moral comfort. It is to preserve the world. Aang's greatest fear is becoming a monster. Yang Chen's greatest fear is becoming irrelevant. That difference shapes everything. When Yang Chen looks at a threat, she does not ask, "Can I live with this choice?" She asks, "Can the world survive if I don't make it?" And if the answer is no, the decision is already made. There is no anguish afterward, no public soul-searching, no dramatic reflection. She absorbs the cost privately and moves on, because lingering would endanger more lives. This is why Yang Chen feels so cold when compared to other avatars. It is not because she lacks empathy, it is because she has already accounted for it. She has already done the math. Every life lost by her hand is weighed against the lives saved by her action. And if the equation favors intervention, she does not hesitate. She does not ask for absolution. She does not seek understanding. She acts, and that makes her terrifying. Yangchen is the avatar who proves that morality does not always feel moral, that compassion can look like brutality when viewed up close, and that peace is often built on decisions no one wants to remember. This is also why Yangchen casts such a long shadow over Aang. When Aang meets Yangchen, he is confronted not with an avatar who failed, but with one who succeeded at a cost he is unwilling to pay. She does not mock his pacifism. She does not belittle his struggle. She simply tells him the truth as she sees it. The world will not always accommodate his ideals. And she is right. Aang's story is defined by resistance to that truth. Yang Chen's story is defined by acceptance of it. She is what the Avatar becomes when they stop hoping the world will change for them. She is what happens when the Avatar changes the world instead. And once you understand that, Yang Chen stops being inspirational. She becomes unsettling. Kyoshi's violence is loud, it reshapes landscapes, it leaves scars you can point to and histories that remember her name. When Kyoshi acts, the world knows it has been acted upon. Her presence is overwhelming, her decisions final, her consequences visible. Yangchen's violence is quieter. That is the difference that matters. Where Kyoshi's actions feel like eruptions, Yangchen's feel like corrections. She does not tear the world apart to impose balance. She trims it. She removes pieces before they destabilize the whole. Her danger lies not in how much force she uses, but in how precisely she uses it. Yangchen does not need spectacle. She does not need fear. She does not need to be remembered as terrifying. She only needs the problem to stop existing. This is why comparing Yang Chen to Kyoshi misses the point. Kyoshi is willing to do terrible things. Yang Chen is willing to decide that terrible things are necessary long before anyone else is ready to accept that conclusion. Kyoshi reacts to injustice with force because she has learned, painfully, that hesitation costs lives. Yang Chen acts before injustice has time to fully take shape. She sees the trajectory early and she intervenes while the world still believes the situation can be talked through. That timing is what makes her so dangerous. Anger is predictable. Rage escalates. Fear leaves patterns. You can see them coming. Yangchen offers none of that. Her decisions do not escalate emotionally. They simply arrive. She does not need to be pushed to the edge. She does not need to be provoked. She does not need a personal reason. She only needs a clear assessment that the future will be worse if she does nothing. That makes resistance almost impossible. People imagine danger as something explosive. But the most dangerous force in Avatar is inevitability. Yang Chen embodies inevitability. Once she determines that balance requires intervention, there is no drama left in the choice. There is only execution. This is why Yang Chen never breaks the way later avatars do. Kyoshi fractures under the weight of her legend. Roku is consumed by regret. Aang nearly collapses under the moral strain of his role. Yangchen does not spiral because she never pretends the role is anything other than what it is. She does not seek moral purity from the Avatar's duty. She seeks effectiveness. Yangchen understands something fundamental that later Avatars resist. The Avatar is not a hero in the traditional sense. The Avatar is a system, a safeguard, a failsafe built into the world to prevent collapse when every other structure fails. And systems do not hesitate. They activate when thresholds are crossed. Yangchen treats the Avatar role exactly like that. She does not see herself as a moral example meant to inspire others. She sees herself as a corrective mechanism meant to prevent disaster. That framing removes an enormous amount of psychological strain. Aang wants to be good. Kyoshi wants to be just. Yangchen wants the world to continue existing. Those priorities lead to very different outcomes. This is why Yangchen's calm is so unsettling. It is not serenity. It is acceptance. She has already made peace with the fact that some decisions will make her unlovable. She has already accepted that history will simplify her actions, strip them of context, and judge her anyway. And she acts regardless. There is a particular kind of danger that comes from someone who does not need to be understood. Yang Chen does not need validation. She does not need agreement. She does not need the comfort of knowing others would make the same choice. She only needs to know that the choice prevents greater harm. That internal alignment is what makes her unstoppable. When Yang Chen speaks to Aang, she does not threaten him. She does not guilt him. She does not raise her voice or demand obedience. She explains the reality she sees with quiet certainty, and then she leaves him alone with it. That is far more effective than pressure. She knows that once Aang understands the stakes, the burden will sit with him, whether he accepts her guidance or not. Yangchen does not force the decision. She ensures the truth is unavoidable. That is another form of danger. Yangchen's legacy is not built on fear, but on responsibility. She teaches the world that peace maintained through inaction is an illusion, that unresolved threats do not dissolve on their own. They compound, and someone eventually has to pay the price. Yangchen chooses to be that someone. This is why her version of compassion looks so alien compared to Aang's. Aang's compassion focuses on the individual in front of him. Yangchen's compassion operates at scale. She is willing to harm one to prevent thousands from suffering later. That does not make her cruel. It makes her utilitarian. And utilitarian morality, when wielded without hesitation, is terrifying. Because it works. Yangchen does not romanticize suffering. She does not glorify sacrifice. She simply accepts that some harm is unavoidable and that delaying it often multiplies it. Her danger lies in her refusal to lie to herself about that reality. She is not blind to the cost. She just does not allow the cost to paralyze her. This is where the contrast with Aang becomes most stark. Aang believes that refusing violence preserves his humanity. Yang Chen believes that refusing to act endangers everyone else's. Neither of them is wrong. But Yang Chen understands something Aang spends his entire journey grappling with. The Avatar cannot save everyone and remain untouched. The question is not whether the Avatar will be changed by their choices. The question is whether the world will survive those choices at all. Yang Chen answers that question decisively. She is not dangerous because she enjoys violence. She is dangerous because she understands its place in the system. She understands when it is the least destructive option available, and she does not delay once that conclusion is reached. That level of certainty is rare, and when paired with power, it becomes lethal. Yang Chen is the Avatar who proves that moral hesitation is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is fear disguised as virtue, and sometimes the most compassionate thing is to do what no one else is willing to do, quietly, decisively, and without asking to be forgiven. This is why Yang Chen never becomes a myth the way Kyoshi does. Myths are built on spectacle. Yang Chen leaves behind stability, order, a world that does not realize how close it came to unraveling. That kind of legacy does not inspire songs. It inspires silence. And silence, in this case, is the sound of a threat that never arrived. Yang Chen's danger is not that she could destroy the world. It is that she could decide exactly how to save it, and do so without anyone's permission. Yang Chen's true danger is not found in what she does, but in what she leaves behind. Every Avatar inherits a world shaped by the choices of the one before them. Wars ended or allowed to begin, threats eliminated or left to grow, balance restored cleanly or held together by compromise. But Yangchen leaves something heavier than broken nations or political consequences. She leaves certainty. When Yangchen speaks to Aang, she is not asking him to become her. She is showing him what the Avatar looks like when doubt has already been resolved. She represents an endpoint Aang is moving toward, whether he wants to admit it or not. A version of the Avatar who has accepted that the role will demand actions that cannot be undone or morally softened, and that terrifies him. Aang does not reject Yang Chen because she is wrong. He rejects her because she is right in a way he cannot yet live with. She forces him to confront a future where his ideals may not survive contact with reality, where his refusal to act could cost lives, where compassion without boundaries becomes negligence. Yangchen does not frame this as a debate. She frames it as preparation. She understands that the Avatar's greatest enemy is not tyranny or chaos, but hesitation at the wrong moment. She knows that the longer a threat exists, the more innocent people it consumes. And she knows that the Avatar is often the only one capable of ending that trajectory. That knowledge changes a person. Yangchen has already crossed the psychological threshold Aang stands before. She has accepted that the Avatar's role is not to preserve their own innocence, but to decide who pays the price when balance collapses, and someone always pays the price. This is why Yangchen does not argue emotionally with Aang. She does not try to persuade him with fear or guilt. She simply tells him what the job requires when no other options remain. She treats him like a successor, not a child, and then she lets him struggle. Because Yangchen understands something crucial. Certainty cannot be borrowed. It must be earned. Aang cannot become the avatar he needs to be by following her example blindly. He has to arrive at his own answer, even if it costs him. Yang Chen's danger is that she knows this and still stands by her position. She does not soften her words to make Aang more comfortable. She does not dilute the truth to protect his feelings. She respects him enough to let the weight of the decision sit with him fully. That is not cruelty. That is trust. Yang Chen trusts that Aang will eventually understand what she already knows, that pacifism is not a shield against consequence. It is a choice that carries its own risks, and that refusing violence does not absolve the avatar of responsibility when the world burns anyway. This is where Yang Chen's legacy becomes unavoidable. Aang ultimately finds a path that allows him to remain true to himself. He spares Ozai. He refuses to kill. He finds a solution that preserves his values without abandoning the world. And because of that, many people believe he disproves Yang Chen. He does not. Aang's solution does not negate Yang Chen's philosophy. It exists because of it. He is able to search for another way precisely because Yang Chen and avatars like her ensured the world survived long enough for that search to matter. Aang stands on a foundation built by decisive avatars who acted when mercy would have failed. Yang Chen is one of those avatars. She does not resent Aang for choosing differently. She does not see his pacifism as weakness. She sees it as a luxury afforded by a world stabilized through hard decisions made long before his time. That is the inheritance she passes forward. Yangchen teaches that the avatar's role is not to be morally comfortable, but to be morally necessary, to make choices others cannot, to absorb blame so the world can move forward, to accept that history will simplify, distort, and judge their actions without understanding the alternatives that were avoided. That acceptance is what makes her dangerous, not because she lacks compassion, but because she understands its limits. She knows that empathy without action can become cruelty, that waiting for perfect solutions often allows imperfect disasters to unfold, and that sometimes the avatar must choose between being loved and being effective. Yang Chen chooses effectiveness, and in doing so, she ensures that future avatars will always feel the tension she resolved within herself. They will struggle with her certainty. They will question her methods. They will try to find gentler paths. But they will never escape the reality she represents. Yang Chen is the avatar who proves that peace is not preserved by hope alone. It is preserved by intervention, by restraint applied early, by consequences delivered before chaos has time to spread. She is dangerous because she removes ambiguity, because she acts before the world believes action is necessary, because she does not ask whether her choices will be forgiven. She only asks whether they will work, and most of the time they do. That is why Yang Chen does not haunt the world as a villain. She haunts it as a standard, a reminder of what the avatar becomes when they stop asking who they want to be and start asking what the world needs them to do. Aang resists that answer. Kyoshi embodies it openly. Roku is broken by failing to act soon enough. Yang Chen accepts it completely. And that acceptance is what makes her the most dangerous avatar of all. Not because she destroys balance, but because she knows exactly how to preserve it and is willing to pay the price alone.